Okay, guys, so to continue, we left off with thinking about who does Paris choose. Obviously, he chooses the most beautiful woman in the world to love him, Aphrodite's bride. She's the goddess of love and beauty, after all. And, we can start to think about, make some inferences about what this choice might reveal about Paris and his role in starting this Trojan War. He's a superficial guy. He's a guy who doesn't want fame. He's not interested in power. And he's not brave or strong. He has not a lot of valor like his brother Hector, who we'll talk about in a moment, like men like Achilles or even Odysseus, who's going to be the main character of our epic once we start reading the Odyssey. So there's a new conflict because we have to think about, well, who is this most beautiful woman in the world? Well, it's Helen. Helen is a beautiful woman, and obviously, like most beautiful women who are of age, they are spoken for. So we have to think about, who is this Helen? A lot of times you'll hear her referred to as the face that launched 1,000 ships. Well, Zeus is the product of, Helen is the product of Zeus and a love affair that he had with a mortal. And when it came time to marry Helen, so many men wanted to marry her that her father, King Tyndareus, knew that it would be a problem no matter what, no matter who he picked. Men would be jealous. So if she picked, you know, Joe, Bob would be upset, right? And they could start fighting amongst each other. So before you could even be in contention or in the running to marry this beautiful woman, Helen, you had to sign a blood oath of allegiance. And even though there's not pen and paper at this time, your word was your bond, and you took this oath seriously. So you swore the oath of allegiance. Once you swore, King Tyndareus would consider you as a potential husband for his daughter Helen. Well, so who is Helen's husband? Who is the lucky guy? Well, the lucky guy is not just some, lout, some stupid person who doesn't have any strength or power in the Greek kingdom. He happens to be King Menelaus. He is the powerful king of Sparta. Spartans are known for their fighting and their skill on the battlefield. And he happens to be the brother of the king of all of Greece, the big head honcho, kind of like the president of all the Greek islands, Agamemnon. And Agamemnon is a fierce warrior, fierce king, and he rules all of the Greek armies, so to speak. So you can kind of think of it as, the Greece was the United States, and within Greece there are lots of different states, okay? And Menelaus would be, like the governor king of Sparta, okay? But they would all be under the rule of someone like Agamemnon. So Menelaus, how do you think he reacts to Paris stealing his wife? Well, this means war in his eyes. He understands that all the men have signed an oath of allegiance to do whatever it takes to protect Helen. And so he goes to his brother and says, we have to go to war. Agamemnon is happy about this because he's been trying to convince his kings to go to war to sack Troy for a long time. He's wanted to get beyond that fortress, that stronghold. He knows that there's riches in the city, and he wants to try. And he so wants to go to war that not only does he enforce all of his kings to stand by their oath of allegiance, but he is willing to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia, so that the ships can sail. Because at first, when they want to take off, there aren't enough winds and the ships aren't going. And so, there's another prophecy that says, the gods want you to make a sacrifice of your daughter, and he does that. It comes back to haunt him a little later on because his wife will get her revenge. And we'll learn about that in book 1 of the Odyssey. So they call 1,000 ships to sail for Troy. Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter Iphigenia, and they're well on their way. And Odysseus is one of the men who has to go to war, even though he doesn't want to. The war lasts for 10 years. It's not an easy war. The gods are taking sides. 1 minute the Greeks are winning. 1 minute the Trojans are winning. And there's a time when the Greeks are really suffering because Achilles, their best fighter, stops fighting because Agamemnon steals his lover Briseis. And it's a really hard time for the Greeks. Patroclus, watching his friends die on the field, Patroclus is Achilles' cousin, and he steals his armor. They look alike, Achilles and Patroclus, and when they're on the battlefield fighting, he has a helmet covering his face, and when he stands face to face with Hector, the great prince of Troy, Hector kills Patroclus, thinking that it's Achilles. Of course, once Achilles realizes that his cousin has died. He wants revenge and he singles out Hector. Not only does he kill Hector, but he disgraces himself and his honor by dragging Hector's body behind a chariot. The one thing about Greek fighters is, it's fight to the death when you're on the battlefield, but when the battle is over, you allow both sides to come and pay homage to the dead. Everybody takes their dead and shows them the proper burial rites and respect. And by dragging Hector's body, Achilles flouts that tradition and really makes an enemy of a lot of the gods on Mount Olympus. So after 10 years of struggle, it is our superhero, or our hero. He's not really a superhero. He has no brute strength, but Odysseus, our hero, is the mastermind of war, meaning that he has a great insight and he can plan things or plan out the battles really well. So although he has no superpower, his intelligence is his superpower. And so he devises the plan of the Trojan horse. So they take all of the Greek ships that they won't need to sail back home in because so many men have died, and he creates this horse because the horses are the animal that the Trojans revere and like. He tricks the Trojans into accepting the horse into the city. Before King Priam accepts the horse into the city, there's someone who tries to tell him, a prophet, says, no, don't take this horse, it's a trick. But Poseidon, because he wants the Greeks to win, the god of the sea, sends a sea serpent to kill the prophet. And so King Priam sees that as a sign that he should take the Trojan horse. The Greek men are able to hide inside because it's hollow inside. And once the men from the Trojans wheel it into the city, they party all day in through the night. And once they pass out from the drinking and the celebrating, all of the Greek soldiers climb out of the horse and sack the city and burn it to the ground. So finally, the Greeks are victorious. They've won the Trojan War, and Odysseus should celebrate. And from the god's perspective, he should celebrate by saying, thank you, Poseidon, for sending your sea serpent to kill the prophet who was telling King Priam, don't let the horse in the city. But he has a lot of hubris or pride, and that is Odysseus's fatal flaw. He doesn't know humility. He brags too much. And when you have to get home by sea, the person you don't want to make angry is Poseidon, because you have to travel using his sea. And Poseidon is offended. Poseidon is offended that, Odysseus didn't thank him for sending the sea serpent. And so he says his punishment is that he will never make it home to Ithaca. And that's where our story is really going to begin, in a sense, in that Odysseus is not able to get home from Troy after 20 years of fighting. Actually, 10 years of fighting and another 10 trying to make it home. And the Odyssey is the story of Odysseus trying to get home from Troy.